When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm your host of Yoga Birth Babies. And today we're going to talk about IVF. It's a topic I haven't really had a chance to dive into in the past, but I've had students talk to me, and a few actually confide in me about their journey going through IVF. And I've had some friends go through it that I thought this is a great time to dive into it, understand it, and if we can discuss it here, maybe it's helping someone that's considering it or going through it find that support. So in this conversation, we're going to go pretty deep. We talk about the first steps someone should consider when going through IVF, the different tests and evaluations that patients may experience in the early stage of IVF, even talking about busting some myths and misconceptions about IVF, and then how to prepare your mind and body, different tips on nutrition and lifestyle and supplements. Then we dive into navigating the process, because there's a lot of medications, a lot of protocols, and then how to stay organized. And then, of course, understanding the whole decision-making around embryo testing and freezing and transfer strategies. And I have to tell you, there's so many more things that we talked about, because as I was having this conversation, my mind just kept popping with questions that I kept shooting at our guest. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Now, if you're in the world of IVF or considering it, you probably already know Dr. Aimee. She's also known as the Egg Whisperer on social media, and her podcast, The Egg Whisperer Show. Let me tell you a little bit about her background. So Dr. Aimee graduated from UCLA School of Medicine and completed her residency in obstetrics and gynecology at Harvard Medical School. She also completed a fellowship in reproductive endocrinology and infertility, and holds a master's in public health management and policy from the University of Michigan. She is a fellow of the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and continues to contribute to research in the field of reproductive endocrinology and infertility. And in her off time, Dr. Aimee is the mom of 4 rambunctious kids aged from 10 and under. So she is one busy lady. So she and I dove into this really supportive, deep conversation that I'm excited for you to hear. She is so generous with her time and her knowledge. If you are heading down this path or in this path, I'm excited for you to hear this conversation. Now, before we get to my talk with Dr. Aimee, I always love just to give a check-in about what's happening at Prenatal Yoga Center. As always, really the place to get the most up-to-date info about our classes and our workshops and our teacher training, head to our website, prenatalyogacenter.com. From there, you can look at the schedule, you can look at our online videos, you can really dive in deep. And of course, while you're there, you can sign up for our newsletter. We send it out every week. There's a little intro from me. I often try to give tips and advice. And then we have a tip of the week, which it's usually a video that we dive a little deeper into. One week it might be about pregnancy. Another week it could be about birthing positions. Another week it could be about parenting. So I try to give back a little something, because I know your time is valuable. And if you're going to open the newsletter, I want to give you something back. And of course, it gives you our most up-to-date workshop. So you can check all that out on our website, prenatalyogacenter.com. And then 2 more things I just want to request. If you have a topic I haven't covered in these last 8 years, over 400 episodes, let me know. I've had people reach out and share with me. And then it's exciting for me to look for the expert to speak on that topic. So you can reach me at deb@prenatalyogacenter.com if you have an idea for a podcast episode, or if you think you'd be a great speaker, go ahead and fill out the application to be on our podcast. I've gotten some really great speakers from that. And then one last thing is please leave a rating and review for the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It helps people find us and it helps us grow our community. All right, that is enough of me. We're going to take a super quick break. When we come back, please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Aimee.
How do you top your love for your cat? With a cascade of decadent savory gravy over a mouth-watering mousse pâté. Fancy Feast gems. 2 gourmet pâtés in one convenient pack. Simply peel and plate to reveal a pyramid shape that makes eating delightful and pamper her with an experience as extraordinary as she is. Turn the everyday into the extraordinary with Fancy Feast gems.
Hi, Aimee. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Jen, for having me on. I was so delighted that you invited me, and what an honor to be here with you today.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I've been following you online, and I personally haven't done IVF, but I've had a lot of friends that have, and it's been something that's intrigued me. And I've had some students say, will you talk about it on the podcast? And I said, yes, and I know exactly who to reach out to.
Awesome.
So I'm excited to dig into this. So first, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what led you to specializing in fertility and IVF?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to describe me is I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with helping people become parents. And the best way to do that is by being a fertility doctor. And I was obsessed with it from birth. I come from a long line of doctors, especially fertility doctors. My dad was an OB-GYN who practiced fertility the way he could, and my grandfather as well. One of my first patients, true story, is a patient that my grandfather delivered their parents. My dad delivered their daughter. And then I helped her daughter get pregnant through IVF. Isn't that a wild story?
Oh, I love that. What a nice connection.
It's kind of in my blood. I have a gene for it. And I'm just very passionate about it. I know that I was born with just one gift, and that is just helping people get pregnant. I literally suck. Everyone thinks I'm smart. I'm not. I'm just really good at one thing, and I love doing it.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So let's, jump right into this. So let's start at the beginning. What are the first steps someone should take into consideration when they're considering IVF?
Well, the first step is, what is my diagnosis? What am I even doing IVF for? I think it's really important to get an explanation. And if you've been given the explanation that it's unexplained, then just deep breathe. You know that Dr. Aimee is rolling her eyes as she's hearing you say that, or hearing your doctor say that to you. And what you're going to ask next is, what are the possible explanations in my case? So if, let's say, you're 43 years old and you're starting IVF and your doctor says it's unexplained, well, you just told me the explanation. You're 43. So what do we need to address? We need to address egg quality and support your egg quality before you even start your cycle. So I think that's one of the first things every IVF patient should do, is understand what their diagnosis is so that you're addressing it before you start IVF.
That's a fantastic thing. And then how do they continue to dig deeper? What kind of tests or evaluations should patients expect during these early stages of IVF preparation and even finding out what their diagnosis really is?
Yeah, so I came up with, and I'm sure you're not going to be surprised, with lots of catchy phrases, just because I got so sick of people coming in with this. I don't know what my diagnosis is. So I'm like, how is that? There are 5 really straightforward things that we always do for fertility patients, and this patient has only had 2 of them. So that's why I came up with the Tushy method. T stands for tube, so making sure your fallopian tubes are open. U stands for uterus, so we like to rule out things like polyps, adenomyosis, fibroids in the uterus. The S is for sperm, so sperm health is 50% of the embryo. H is for hormones, so looking at your day 3 FSH, estradiol, and your AMH. And Y is for your genetics. Chromosome analysis and carrier screening, those are part of my fertility genetic tests that I offer patients.
That is so straightforward. I love that. At what point should someone start to look for a diagnosis? Like, how long should somebody be trying and then they're realizing, like, okay, we're having a problem, let's go in for testing?
Well, my approach is the similar approach that people take when they're going on a safari when it comes to getting pregnant. You do your research, you go to the travel clinic, you get your immunizations, and then you travel. Getting pregnant should be no different. I think everyone should get some baseline fertility tests before they even start trying. Get a pelvic ultrasound first. I mean, you're not going to go on a cross-country drive from California to Florida without making sure that your car is tuned up. So why don't we have that same approach when it comes to pregnancy, which is one of the most important journeys of our lives? So I recommend for people who are considering trying to conceive soon, go to your OB-GYN, ask for some basic fertility tests, do your genetic testing, get an ultrasound, look at your uterus, look at your ovarian reserve, get a sperm health check. And then you can start trying with confidence so you're not wondering what you're missing.
That makes sense. I understand that. And I guess my brain of, insurance deductibles popped up and I'm thinking, is that going to be expensive? Is that stuff covered by insurance?
Well, I think preconception testing and a preconception visit with an OB-GYN should be covered. And I think you just have to check with your insurance and call your OB-GYN's office. But when you make an annual exam visit, just make sure you let the doctor know that you would also like to do some basic fertility tests and see if they're covered. Most people now have fertility diagnostic testing covered in most states, but not everybody. So you just have to check with your insurance and see. But a fertility panel probably costs at most $150, an ultrasound around $250, depending on where you get it. A semen analysis around $125, depending on where you get it. So there are ways that you can do these tests that are cost effective because if you can imagine all the money that you're going to spend on your OPKs, which are the ovulation predictor kits, pregnancy tests, that adds up as well. So if you take all the money that you spent tracking your ovulation and, trying to see if you're pregnant, you might have saved a lot more money figuring out what making sure that everything is going to work first before you start spending that kind of money on those tests.
That makes sense. I kind of like your analogy of taking the trip. Yes. Check the tires before you jump on the road.
But I do have I call them my golden rules. I mean, if you're, let's say, over 37, don't wait too long. If it's been 6 months, go right to a fertility doctor. Don't wait. And even start off with a fertility doctor, especially if you want 2 kids. If you're younger, let's say 32, and you already are having really painful, heavy periods, you have irregular cycles, you might have signs of PCOS. Also, don't wait. Get seen first. You don't have to wait 6 months or a year and then go see a doctor. You can always see a doctor first.
I like that. That can help people with the frustration and the anxiety around, am I going to get my period? Did I do it this time? So thank you for that advice. So how can someone know if IVF is the right step for them compared to the other fertility treatments?
Well, IVF is going to give you the best chance of pregnancy, and it's going to be potentially getting you to pregnancy even faster than all the other steps because the chances are so much higher. So let's just compare. Okay. For example, an IUI, depending on your age, at most a 15% chance for pregnancy.
And explain to people that might not know that. What is that IUI?
Yeah, that's so easy. Turkey baster. Everyone knows what a turkey baster is, right? So it's the turkey baster approach. Obviously, there are no turkey basters in my clinic, but we use a catheter, get the sperm sparkling clean, and introduce it at the top of the uterus. And then with IVF, the reason why the chances are so much better is because you're bypassing all the things that we rely on nature to happen that need to happen for IUI to work. For example, the egg has to travel into the fallopian tube for an IUI to work. Well, through IVF, we're actually getting the egg directly from the ovary. In IUI, we're relying on nature for the egg and sperm to meet in the fallopian tube. Well, with IVF, we're putting them together in a petri dish. In IUI, we're relying on nature for the embryo to actually find its way into the uterus. Well, with IVF, we're actually taking an embryo and inserting it into the uterus. So it's a much higher chance for pregnancy. And I love the fact that people can have the family size that they want with IVF, because let's say you're starting your family at 37 and you want 2 or 3 kids. Well, if you imagine you're getting pregnant with IUI, that second or third child might be harder to come by just because you're older when you're ready to try. So through IVF, you can do enough cycles to freeze embryos, similar to a woman who's thinking about banking eggs for enough kids for herself in the future. Well, couples can, or even independent mothers can use IVF to also plan in the same way.
All right, you just sparked a lot of questions, so I'm going to try. Oh, there's so many. Okay, I'm going to pick one at a time. So I know that IVF has refined through the years. So I'm thinking back to one of my friends now. Her kids are like 18 and 15. So this was between her kids, her first one and then her second. And she did IVF and they implanted several embryos. Oh, no, maybe it was, I'm backing up. I think they gave her, is it called Clomid?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So they did Clomid. So maybe it wasn't IVF. Maybe it was Clomid and then the sperm going in there. And she got pregnant with a lot of babies. And then they had to select some to not have. Is that one of the side effects of some of these fertility treatments?
Okay. So I think what you're saying is she got pregnant with too many babies.
Yes.
And they had to do a selective reduction because she's super ovulated.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, with IVF, you usually only get pregnant with the number of embryos you transfer. So if you're transferring one, it's one baby. There's about a 2% chance that one could split into two. With ovulation induction, you have less control, but typically patients will come in for a monitoring ultrasound and we can see how many mature follicles that are going to ovulate. So if it's, let's say, over 3, a patient might want to consider canceling the cycle and not trying to get pregnant that cycle because the risk of multiples would be too great. But selective reduction is a heartbreaking procedure that sometimes patients have to consider if they're pregnant with more than twins.
And then what about one of my closest friends had IVF and had twins? Is that still something we're seeing a lot of?
It is, but not so much today compared to, let's say, 10 years ago.
Yes, her twins are 11.
Yeah, and the reason is we can select embryos a lot better now, and we can do that through the use of genetic screening of embryos. So then you can prioritize embryos based on the genetic results and then transfer the single best. And on average, most labs have at least a 55% live birth rate with that type of treatment. Most high-quality genetically screened embryos will even have an 80 to 85% chance of working. So I'll typically transfer 2 embryos if a patient's embryos are lower quality or if they've done more than 2 transfers that haven't worked, then we might start thinking about transferring 2. But for the most part, most doctors will transfer 1 at a time, just like me.
That makes a lot of sense. And then, sorry, you really sparked like a whole mass amount of questions. I'm still picking them out. So is there a certain age that you recommend somebody to do, not necessarily IVF, but I guess freeze their eggs?
Yeah. I mean, the younger you are, the more viable your eggs are. So even 25-year-olds can consider freezing their eggs. But I think most women will do a good job preserving their fertility if they freeze their eggs by the age of 32. And certainly women over 32 can freeze their eggs and expect a really good outcome. You just have to freeze more at that age. I have an egg freezing calculator that I share with patients. It's a cool website from Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston where you put in your age, the number of mature eggs, and you can see how many live births you might be able to get from that number of eggs, 1, 2, or 3. And when I guide patients on their egg freezing journey, I want them to have at least a 50% chance of having 2 children. Unless, of course, they've already shared with me that they want 3 or 4, then I'll adjust the numbers so that they can freeze the number that will give them the best chance of reaching the goals that they want.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about mentally and physically preparing for IVF because I'm sure you have a lot of tips for that. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Finish training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
Okay, we are back. So, what can individuals or couples do to physically prepare their bodies for IVF? Any tips around nutrition or lifestyle or supplements?
Absolutely. Easy rule. I call it my 10-minute mile rule. And I tell patients that I want them to be 10-minute mile fit. And what that means is you need to be fit enough to be able to put sneakers on and run a 10-minute mile without feeling like you're going to die afterwards. That means you're fit enough to be pregnant. I mean, pregnancy is a marathon and you need to train for it. You don't just show up to the LA Marathon and say, I'm ready to run. You properly train and you prepare and you eat healthy and you watch your BMI so that you can run the marathon and finish it. So same thing with pregnancy. So I talk to patients about meeting with a fertility nutritionist. I talk to them about getting enough steps per day, strength training, hydration. We talk about sleep quality, all the things that an elite athlete would think about. I want my patients to think about too. And no, I don't want them to be elite athletes. I don't need them to run 6-minute miles, but I just want them to feel really good in their skin and be cardiovascularly fit.
So, like a 10-minute mile, is that like a fast, brisk walk? I hate running. Okay.
Totally. Yes, you can totally brisk walk a 10-minute mile. I run like a turtle. My sister has always made fun of me and she says, I'm so embarrassed for you. It's embarrassing watching me run, but my run is so, I don't want to make fun of other people, but I'll just say what my sister calls me. She calls me pathetic. But like my 10-minute mile is more like someone else's brisk walk.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure that out. And then in terms of supplements, I was a little, again, I'm kind of out of myself that I was nervous because I had my first at 37 and my second at 40. So I was very nervous about all this. And so I started doing research, and I'm sure you have better research, but I started doing things like take prenatal vitamins, and someone said zinc, and I was doing Chinese herbs. Do you have anything specific that you recommend that, I don't know if it will help egg quality or help prepare the body?
I absolutely do. So I recommend taking a really good prenatal that has fish oil and choline in it and vitamin D. So there's one that I really like. It's called Theranatal and has 2,000 IUs of vitamin D, fish oil, and choline. And then CoQ10 to also support egg health, egg quality. I recommend an NAD booster to increase NAD in our cells. NAD goes down as a woman gets older, especially over the age of 30. And by replacing it, replenishing it, you might also be improving your egg quality. So those are the 3 go-to supplements that I tell patients about. There are some patients that I recommend other things. For patients who might have PCOS or endometriosis, I recommend Ovasitol and N-acetylcysteine. And I also want to add resveratrol for egg health as well. Melatonin at night is also something else that I recommend. So those are my go-to supplements that I recommend typically for my patients.
Anything for the sperm?
Absolutely. So there's a great supplement also by Theranatal, and it's called Conception XR. I tell guys to take fish oil, vitamin D, and CoQ10 as well.
Oh, I love this. I really think supporting the body in any healthy way is important. All right, so let's shift gears and start talking about navigating the process. So I know, again, I'm only thinking about some of my friends and their kids are a little older. There was lots of shots and medications and protocols. So can you talk a little bit about what those medications are, what the protocols are involving IVF, and then how can patients stay organized and advocate for themselves throughout the process?
Oh, absolutely. So as far as protocols, it's really important for patients to ask their doctor why they're picking the protocol for them and what they expect. And if that protocol, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Doesn't work, what else would they consider? Because then it almost seems like they're giving you options to research both. And then you can understand why they've picked what they've picked for you. Typically, we give patients medications that will help the entire cohort that they have to grow, and we dose them at an amount that we think will target that number and for them to grow safely. And what I mean by that is some patients will have over 20 follicles. We're not going to use the same dose on that patient that we'll use on a patient that, let's say, has 6 follicles. The medication, the terminology is gonadotropins. So these are hormones that directly talk to the ovaries and get the ovaries to grow. It's basically, maturing the eggs. So the same hormones, FSH and LH, that our brain sends those signals to our ovaries to grow that one egg each month. Well, our brain doesn't send enough of a signal to get all of them to grow. So that's why we administer these medications at a much higher dose than our brain can do to get them all to grow. Sometimes we also add HGH, or human-derived growth hormone, that can also help potentially in some patients with egg quality. We also introduce a medication to prevent ovulation, and there are different ways of doing that. And then a medication to induce the final maturation stage of the egg so that when we're doing the egg retrieval, we're getting mature eggs because those are the ones that are most likely to turn into embryos.
So for the process, you are monitoring when the eggs are ready or the follicles are ready to be retrieved. And then you have and then is it through ultrasound, or how are you,
Yes.
or is it, ultrasound and blood work?
Yes.
Or is it, okay.
Yeah, typically a patient will have about 5 ultrasounds in a 2-week time frame. That's what I tell patients. So they'll get to know me very well.
So they're kind of, in a way, on call to their body and their follicles. Like you're saying, you're doing an ultrasound, you're like, all right, tomorrow is the day you got to come in. Is that how it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly right. So my patients aren't planning trips to Tahoe, for example, mid-cycle because I'll need to see them.
All right. And so then you retrieve, and then how long is it between retrieval and then putting and you should know the name, I'm sorry, I don't, but
That's
putting it back in.
Yeah. So
implantation, is that what it is? No. Okay.
Yes, there are a lot of implantations. There are different options. So one is fresh transfer and one is frozen transfer. Fresh transfer means after the egg retrieval, approximately 3 to 5 days later, we can take an embryo and put it in the uterus. Frozen transfer means you've frozen the embryos. You're going to allow the ovaries to rest, and then you're going to prepare the patient for a transfer, which is called a frozen embryo transfer. Most patients who do that because they want to do multiple rounds, because they want to bank and store embryos for the future. They want to make sure that they have enough because they want to do multiple rounds before getting pregnant. Often patients do this. They freeze their embryos because they also want to genetically screen them before a transfer.
So that seems to be probably the most popular because they want to do the screening, I'm guessing.
That's right. Yeah, most patients do. I mean, there are limitations to the genetic screening, but most patients do choose that. And if you choose that timeline, typically your period starts about 2 weeks after the egg retrieval. That's around the same time that you get the genetic testing results, and then you can transfer about 3 weeks later. So from the time you do the egg retrieval until you do the transfer, I tell patients it can be anywhere from 5 to 8 weeks later.
All right. So what are some of the side effects? Because I know there's a lot of medications. What are some of the side effects from the IVF medications?
Yeah. So the most significant side effect that I think gets underreported and undershared, maybe it gets shared, but a lot of people, they just bottle it up inside. And I call it the spiciness. You're going to feel wicked spicy, very snarky, very emotional. So the emotional highs and lows as you go through treatment should not be downplayed. Making sure you have enough support around you as you go through the cycle is really important, because one day your doctor can say, your embryos are looking really good, everything's growing well. And then 2 days later, you might find out that only one continued to grow. That's a lot to go through emotionally, and that can cause sadness, anxiety, depression. And then you can find out, you're really sad. All of a sudden, that one top quality embryo actually passed genetic screening. So now you're high again. So just being emotionally prepared for the highs and lows is really important, because that's one of the most significant side effects from fertility treatment. But in general, patients might get slight headaches in the beginning, maybe some nausea. You'll start to feel crampy as your ovaries stretch. You'll see egg white cervical mucus as your estrogen levels go up. You'll feel more bloated as you get closer to the retrieval. And after the egg retrieval, you might feel really bloated. You might gain maybe 5 pounds in water weight from your starting weight at the beginning of the cycle. And then once your hormones crash down after, I know I'm sounding very...
You see my eyes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Once your hormones crash down, then you're going to start feeling really bad PMS symptoms. But I always tell patients, just wait for it. Be really gentle with yourself. Once your period starts, the clouds will open up, the sun will shine through again, and you're going to feel so much better. So just realize that what you're going through is normal, and you will feel better soon.
So that makes me just think like crazy PMS, because the estrogen is just bonkers high. And then a crash, almost like postpartum, where the hormones drop, and then to maybe have a support group lined up. So I'm sure there are IVF support groups out there, and maybe a therapist lined up too to help navigate all this.
All of it, including an acupuncturist. You named it, everyone.
Oh, I love acupuncturists. In fact, that's what I did when I had a miscarriage between my two kids. I saw an acupuncturist, and I'm convinced that was one of that and the, you might laugh, but the Chinese herbs, they truly taste like dirt. For all I know, she went into Central Park and got some dirt and be like, here, Deb, take this.
That's so funny that you should say that, because that's what I tell patients. I said, it's okay. You can take dirt if you want. You can drink it. I'm fine with it.
It literally tasted like dirt, but it worked. And next month I got pregnant. All right. So let's talk about some misconceptions. I'm sure there are many misconceptions. What are the most common misconceptions you hear from patients starting IVF and that you want people to know upfront?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of them is that your follicle count goes up once you start medications, but it actually doesn't. New eggs can sometimes grow from the starting point, but I think everyone should be aware of what I call the IVF pyramid. I didn't coin that phrase. It was another amazing doctor, Dr. Eyvazzadeh. He coined that phrase, and he created this beautiful pyramid that I share with all my patients, showing how you start off with a certain number of follicles, and as you go up the pyramid, that number, it normally changes and it usually goes down. So you start off with a certain number of follicles, then a certain number will grow from that number, and that number is typically lower. Then a certain number of eggs will be mature, a certain number will fertilize, and a certain number will then turn into blastocysts, and then a smaller number will pass genetic screening, and then you'll end up with your baby. So if you thought that 10 follicles equaled 20 eggs in the end, and every egg will turn into an embryo, you're going to be really mad that you went in with these expectations that were not met. So I think meeting a patient's expectations is really important, but you have to set the expectations up correctly from the beginning. So I talk to patients about their pyramid, what it means, how many cycles they need to consider, how many cycles it will take potentially for them to reach their goals. So they're going in with the right mindset, so they're prepared for it.
That makes a lot of sense. So how do you help patients? 'Cause I feel like you're really patient-centered and really make yourself available for the patients. How do you help your patients make decisions around embryo testing, freezing, and transfer strategies if they're feeling very overwhelmed by the whole experience?
Well, I get to know them. I get to know what their goals are. I understand where they're coming from, what they've been through so far. And I want them to believe that everything is still possible if it still makes scientific sense. So if there's still scientific reasons for us to have hope that we can be successful with more cycles, we'll do it. If there are reasons to, do genetic screening, and most people can make it to genetic screening if they have strong enough embryos, we'll do it. But sometimes you get to a point where you learn that maybe the eggs are a little too fragile to grow to the blastocyst stage. Maybe we have to reprioritize our goals and now start thinking about transferring right away or banking embryos as day 3 embryos. And then we consider foregoing the testing that we thought was so important to us. So we learn a lot on the journey, especially when we do the first cycle. We learn how the eggs will look, or how the eggs look under a microscope, and how they perform once fertilized by sperm, and how the embryos grow. And that information is usually reproducible from cycle to cycle. So if someone is making a blastocyst, they'll usually make it in the next cycle. But if someone is not, then you realize that this case is just going to be a little bit more challenging than I thought, and I need to be more creative in helping them.
Have you ever gotten to the point where, and it feels like you are so knowledgeable and you come from a line of fertility support, where you've had to have that tough conversation with a client or patient saying, let's look for other family making options?
Absolutely. So I call it creative family building, and I bring it up in a really gentle way. And it's never the first option for anyone. And it's not the first option that I bring up, because people are seeing me because they want to use their own eggs and sperm.
Right.
But once I share, as they're going through the journey with me, they're seeing in real time and they're hearing the information as it's coming to them. It's not a surprise once we get to the point where things aren't working that I'm bringing up other options. When I bring it up, they always say, I knew you were going to say that. and then it's a relief to me when they say, we've been thinking about it too, and we're ready now. So there are some patients who need a little bit more time. And there are some patients who say to me, you know what? I'd rather not be a mom if it means not using my DNA. And I respect the heck out of that. But I think if someone wants to be a parent enough, they're going to find a way. Whether it's through egg donation, surrogacy, or adoption, that baby will come to them if that's something that they really want.
I really like that you have that space to talk to them about that. Okay, we're going to take another break. And when we come back, what is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents? Okay, think about that. We'll be right back.
Over the last 20 years, L'Oréal Paris has honored 200 women of worth, uplifting their communities. Women who see the worth in every person, overlooked or underserved, who see an opportunity for change, who see a chance for better. They may be one of 200, but their journeys are always uniquely one of one. Here's to 200 more women of worth.
We're worth it.
We're worth it.
We're worth it.
We're worth it. Okay, we're back. So, what is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents?
Ooh, new and expectant parents. Well, I'll just say from my perspective, for that new parent, it's normal to want to destroy everyone around you, especially the first 2 weeks after you deliver a baby. It's almost like you're possessed. Like no one can read your mind. No one can understand what you're going through and what you want. And just know that that's totally normal. And it's really important to be communicative and tell people what you need in that moment and not worry about hurting other people's feelings, especially if it's your first new baby. You have so many people that want to see the baby. Everyone has their own opinions. It's just important to express yourself and be firm so that your wishes are honored and you're not being a people pleaser, because that's what women are. We tend to be people pleasers. Mm-hmm. And then by the time you have your second baby, you realize that what you did was wrong for the first and you don't care about pissing people off.
I like that. I actually hope we all can embrace that. Just try to let that go. So that's for all of us out there. So where can people find your work?
So anywhere you can put in Egg Whisper, any search engine, you can literally find me. And for patients who don't necessarily want to work with me one-on-one, a great way to learn about my approach to even your case would be one of my classes, eggwhisperschool.com. I run an IVF class once a month, and this gives people an opportunity to learn about IVF from my perspective, and then also ask questions. So I stay as long as anyone has a question, and it basically is a Q&A where people can ask their own fertility questions, ask questions about their journey, ask me what I would do in their case so they can learn as much as possible in that class.
You are so generous with your time and knowledge. I just want to thank you, not just on behalf of this podcast that we're having today, but just the community. You really put yourself out there and offer yourself. So I'm thanking you on behalf of the outside community. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. It was really great chatting with you.
Thank you, Deb. Such a pleasure talking to you today.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.